Welcome back to Grinding to a Halt. This week, I'm having a conversation with McLeod Chapman. Clay is a novelist, a screenwriter, comic book writer, all around just really good guy. This was a fun conversation. We get into a little bit of his writing process, times of the day when he is most effective at putting pen to paper, so to speak. We get into our love of Stephen King. We talk about authors that we really enjoy, books that have been resonating with us, and most importantly, why our kids will never think that we're cool. So, all around great conversation. I highly recommend checking out Clay's work. His books, Ghost Eaters and What Kind of Mother. I have read and reread both of those recently, and they are absolutely outstanding. Overall, great conversation. He's an absolute delight to talk to. So I will link out to all of his work in the footnotes for the episode. I don't want to waste any time. I just want to jump right in. We do fade in mid-conversation here. So I like to, especially with someone that I have never spoken to before, just kind of start the conversation, get talking for a couple minutes, and then I will just hit record. That way I can fade into it at a natural point. When I hit record, we were talking about what we would do if we met Stephen King. So we are going to fade in on me answering what I would do if I met Stephen King in person. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. I've met a lot of people that I really respect and look up to, but he's one where I'm like, man, I don't know what I would do. Like,
Yeah.
the amount of feelings I have had reading his stuff. Like, obviously I love the horror side, but 11/22/63 is my favorite book. In
Yeah.
general, I love it so much. I read it every year. And like, it makes me cry every time I read it. I find it to be such a powerful book.
Yeah.
But the guy's just special. There's something about him.
Absolutely. And I, if I met him, it's funny. Like, I don't think I've ever really asked the question, like, what would I do? How would I react? I just assume that I will never meet him or
Yeah.
ever be in a conversation. So it's just like, well, what would I actually do? It's a weird thought. Like,
Yeah,
you know, you would have to pick your favorite. You'd
of
have to
course.
explain to him
Yeah.
why.
Why it's important.
He would nod and be appreciative. But
And
that's
be like, you're so
right.
unoriginal. So many people have, yeah, Pet Cemetery. I get it. Yeah.
But would you go on the outside and try to pick the rare, like the thing that nobody else like so that he could say like, oh, well, no one's told me that that was the one that they like.
Or go with the one that you know is his favorite and be like, Lisi's story is my favorite.
Oh God. I I mean, I don't, it's so funny, like, because you see them, I'm assuming, I'm imagining that like when they have the moment where they're like, do they know who I am? Oh, they know who I am. Oh, like
Yeah.
this, like there's a certain kind of preemptive graciousness, like a certain,
Yeah.
why, yes, I am Stephen. And
Yeah.
then you just have to kind of like roll with it and like tell me, what is it about me that you find so wonderful? And I mean, there are worse things, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm sure he has it down pat at this point in
Uh,
his life.
He, he would have to. And I feel like he's done such a good job. And I believe because it's true that he is like still such a working class guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's still just a Mainer
Mhm.
at his core. Like, he is a dude from Maine.
Yeah.
Anytime he gets into like talking some shit on Twitter and people get mad at him and they call him like a coastal elite, and he's like, I live in the woods in Maine. There's
Yeah.
nothing glamorous about it. So
It's a good life for Mr.
yeah,
King. He's
uh,
not doing so bad for himself,
I uh I wish it on us all. It would be a good one.
I would wish if I had to wish selfishly for myself, I would just wish for like a fraction. I think I would
Yeah,
just want like just a little, just a little, just a little,
just a
little.
taste.
Yeah. I don't need I don't need all of everything. I think I just would
No.
like just just one book. One book of that. One sliver of that life.
Yeah, I would never want that level of fame to me. And not that that was ever his goal, because clearly the work is what matters to him. Because he still is just pounding away at the keyboard every day, like still putting out just amazing novels, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, it's just an after effect that just happened, but I would never want that. That to me seems like a self-imposed prison.
Yeah. I I was talking with a friend. Have you ever read Nat Cassidy?
Yes.
Um, he's amazing. He's a wonderful, right? And he loves Stephen King. And we were talking about him and like about this idea that like nobody is that level of fame.
Yeah.
And that fame, that level of fame just doesn't exist anymore. That it's
No.
somehow kind of like broken down into these smaller niche pockets of whether it's fame or celebrity or whatever.
Yeah.
Like these people know who that author is or that
Yeah.
musician is or that band is or that, but it's there's no kind of ubiquity. I
Mhm.
mean, I guess it's Stephen King and Taylor Swift. Like those are
Yeah,
the
those are the two.
yeah, that's it. That's my life. Taylor and Stephen. Little Stevie, big Taylor.
That's that's not a bad life. That's a pretty
I'm a
good one.
Swifty and a Kingsy. A Kingy Swift. King Swift.
Well, I like I said, there's no format to this. I
Yeah,
have a general
we're
idea of
starting.
what the show is.
We're doing
I
it.
just I just like to have conversations with people I find interesting.
Yeah.
But there were two questions I thought of after I finished What Kind of Mother last week, that I thought it would be important to ask you, which is what the fuck and why? That book is it's magical. There's
Huh?
it's such a surreal read,
Yeah.
like from top to bottom. But the way it is paced, it moves at such a feverish pace, and I never felt like it didn't feel like a single word was wasted when I was reading it. Like it was almost like reading a short story with how quickly it moved.
Yeah.
It was like a magic trick. That book is a magic trick. So just thank you for that.
Wow.
But yeah, no, fuck you
That's
for it also, because it is wild.
I mean, that's I think if I'm being totally frank, that's probably my editor that you
Mhm.
want to thank, or like the kind of the speed and the pace in which it clips along, because
Yeah,
the director's cut of it, the like the or at least kind of in a previous early draft of it,
yeah,
it was so it was like, let's live in this town and
yeah,
let's like go through like it was a lot more uh true crimey, I guess. Like
hmm,
there's a lot more of like I'm a palm reader slash psychic and I'm connecting to
yeah,
this spiritual, like, like, are you out there? Like there's a lot more of that. And
yeah,
like the character Maddie and the character Henry would go, like I wrote so many chapters of like them going to like all these different places. And and it was basically just Henry being like, can you feel him here? And Maddie just being like, yeah. Like, but like the time that they were spending together was in
Mhm.
essence time spent generating or
Yep,
gestating this thing,
yeah,
so that when the latter stuff starts to happen, it felt more like, oh, they've just been making this thing this whole time.
yeah.
And my editor was like, nah. Let's just cut that shit. Let's just get rid of it. Like, why this is boring. This is like all
That's
the like human drama stuff. Who needs
yeah.
that? Let's just move along. Quit.
Well, look, as a King reader, I love that human drama stuff. But as the writer, is it difficult to let go of some of that stuff? Are there pieces that as the editor's giving you those notes, you're like, man, I really loved this section, whether or not it fully connected or moved the story
Yeah.
in the way it needed to?
I mean, I never I kind of devalue my personal self as the kind of authority on
Hmm.
my own books. Uh, and I feel like I need a kind of external presence to, if not guide, to at least uh what is the word? Like I need help. I just need someone to
Yeah.
hold my hand. Because it's raw and it's very like I mean, it's basically like a mass of just stuff of story.
Yeah.
And my editor comes in and is kind of like, you know, a little less of this, a little bit more of this. But like, I mean, like, I wouldn't say that there's things that I miss as much
Mhm.
as things that I mean, and I will advocate for things that I feel like should
Yeah.
stay in or need to that I want to keep if she feels like they're on the chopping block. But I mean, yeah, there were just scenes like I just remember there's two scenes I remember in particular where it's like they go back to his house, to Henry's
Mhm.
house, which is now like there was like this whole thing of like it's it went into foreclosure because he couldn't
Yeah.
afford it. And like now this new family lives there. And so like they show up and Maddie's basically like, hi, we're here to like, you know, he's the previous owner and we want to like take a tour of your house. And they're just like, you know, weirded out by this whole
Yeah.
thing. And and then like she's like, it's there were so many scenes that was like it was the lie. It was her kind of like straddling this line between the the kind of con of it all,
Yeah.
the BS artist of it all, but really trying to do it for his like,
Yeah.
but then like having these little moments, these little kind of epiphanies where she would be like, "Wait a minute, do I do I really feel something here? Like, is that really something?" Um, and there's one in the house, and then and that one I kind of miss just because I loved like that just the awkwardness of
Yeah.
of them being in there. Oh my God, it was just so it was just like total awkward style. Um, but yeah, like I overwrite or I write in the
Mhm.
wrong like every wrong direction I can, and
Yeah.
then through the revision process and the editing process, like we find we find the right path.
Yeah. The story's there. There's just a lot of extra story. You
Yeah,
got the pie crust in the tin and now you need to
yeah.
trim off all the excess.
Oh my God. And I'm just like dumping apple strudel. It's just like all the filling is like, you know, and my editor's like, your pie crust is this big. It's 300 pages. You've just given me a heaping mountain of applesauce and I can't, you know, we can't put the dough in.
Do you think there's a an idea in there somewhere that will become one of those 600 page monsters of a book? Like, do you
Or
think
like in my
well well, I'm sure it's in your head, but do you think there's one that will by the time it goes through actually being written and going through revisions and being edited that it will become one of those?
oh
Or do
man.
you like being that? I'm a huge Chuck Palahniuk reader also, and all of his books are like 240 pages, done, in and out.
I mean, I I I do feel like economy is really kind of cool. Like I wish
Mhm.
you know, if I could do a 200-page novel, there's something just like so kind of like the kind of level of succinctness to it.
Yeah,
Like I would love to write a razor sharp novel. I feel like
yeah,
I'm kind of like somewhere in between where it's kind of like like just vibing, you know, kind of like
yeah.
chilling and like kind of like, you know, like, hey, you know, it's a little bit more Matthew McConaughey than Palahniuk, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't if I have a 600 page novel in me,
Mhm.
it hasn't manifested itself
Yeah.
yet. Um I yeah, that's one day,
Yeah.
maybe.
It's funny because like people say everybody's got like a book in them, and I don't believe that. There's a lot of people who don't have a book in them, and that's okay. So I'm interested in like, does somebody have an epic in them? Because there's some people who just like bang them out, and it makes no sense to me. Chuck Wendig is a good example of that. Of like,
How he can like somehow manifest a 600 page
yeah,
magnum opus like
but
it,
it's also like I learned so much about apples in this book. How did you have time to do so much apple research
yeah,
while also writing a 600-page masterpiece?
yeah. he It's because he's just using books as an excuse to like get out his pet obsessions that
Yeah.
like I think he loved apples
Yeah.
and like his research ends up just becoming a way to kind of justify his his bad habits.
Somebody's knocking on the office door and he's looking at apples. He's like, "It's for a book, I swear. This is a book."
I mean, I was lucky to do a few events with him last year, and like he would just bring apples. He would have, like have apple tasting at bookstores, and he'd be like, "Oh, this is an apple I found in Connecticut. No, this is an apple I found in Vermont." And he would just like tell us all about these apples. And I just feel like we're enabling him. He's using these 600-page novels just as excuses to like and if we stop buying his books, he'll stop. It's like
Yeah. We
this is like a big kind of like intervention for Wendy where we just have to say, stop it, Chuck, like
the
no more apples.
book talk is gonna go crazy next time he announces a book. And we're like, please do not pre-order this. This time it's about pears. Guys, we have to stop this. We can't.
This whole fruit cycle.
That's so funny. I I I love your energy on social media. Like it is such positivity, it's such excitement. But
Yeah.
as someone who is an avid reader, like it's so heartwarming to see how much authors care about authors and how
Yeah.
much everybody advocates for everybody. And anytime somebody's got a book coming out, everybody is blasting it everywhere on every channel.
Yeah.
It's I love when like micro communities kind of come up around things. So I grew up listening to like death metal, but not just death metal, but Christian death metal. So like a subset of a subset.
Wow.
So like the people that were into this, you were really into it. You're not accidentally finding these bands.
Yeah.
So then, like, when those bands tour, like, it's similar bands and it's all the same groups of people that come out to every show in every city. And you're always crashing at a fan's house because nobody has any money for a hotel room.
Yeah.
So, like, these communities come together that help sustain the
Totally.
people creating things that they're interested in. And it's fun to watch, especially in the horror community, how that happens. And you'll see these pockets of like, hey, these 12 people are constantly talking about each other's work. And like
Yeah.
that's how I discovered you. I think Grady Hendrix had posted something about
Oh man.
one of your books. And so I found it through him. I found so many authors like Stephen Graham Jones, somebody had posted about him. And I was like, well, I got to check this book out. And
Yeah.
then I went down the rabbit hole of the mountains of work that guy's capable of.
Oh my God.
Uh,
He's been doing it
it
for decades, decades.
He
And
also said he accidentally wrote a novel.
yeah.
He was writing the third book in the Jay Daniels trilogy. And he's like, yeah, I accidentally wrote another novel while I was writing that. So he has two books coming out this year because he accidentally wrote a book. Like,
Amazing. I mean, he's definitely someone to kind of like hold a candle up to because like
yeah.
I it's one thing that he's as prolific as he
Mhm.
is something entirely altogether like different of like how good
Yeah.
those
It's unreal.
I mean I will just say it like The Only Good Indians is like probably one of, if not my favorite book of
Yeah.
like the last 5 years. Like
Agreed. Agreed.
it's just I mean it's a classic. Like it is
Yeah.
and it's just so rare to read a book that like surprises you. Like you go
Hmm.
in, you think you can kind of like guess where it's going.
Yeah.
But like that book, I just and I remember because there was the fan scene. Like
Yeah.
I just like the fan scene and the motorcycles. Like I will just forever remember those
Yeah.
scenes. Like those are just scenes that like live in me now.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, but what you're saying about like those 12 authors that always talk about each other, I I want it to be more. Um, I hope it's more because I
Hmm.
feel like uh there's so many. There's
Yeah.
just like it's like you can't even there's just no way to read them all. And you
Yeah.
just have to, like dive in. Like like today, um there's this amazing book called Ein Hollow by
Mm.
Tim McGregor that just got released. And it's an amazing book. It's like a gothic historical fiction book, but it's beautiful and it's just friggin' phenomenal.
Mm.
And that's just today. And like
Yeah.
that's not taking into account all the other books that came out this week. And
Yeah.
and you know, I feel really fortunate that like I've been able to kind of become friends with a lot of these authors. And yeah, we're always
Mhm.
kind of like talking each other up and helping each other and supporting each other. But like at the end of the day, like when I read a book and I love it, it's just like that's like all I want to do is just talk about
Yeah.
great books, like books that like left in like an imprint on me. And
Mhm.
like I'm just looking for them. Like
Yeah.
I just want to read awesome books. Like that's a good
That,
life, right?
that's a great life. That is first two things. So I fully agree. Only Good Indians is one of the best books I've ever read, just in general. But it's reading that is such a visual experience. Like the way he writes that book. First off, he writes like poetry. I don't understand how he does it.
Yeah.
And hearing him speak helped me understand his books better. Like hearing the cadence with which he speaks in an interview.
Totally.
Like his books clicked for me in a completely different way after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's like watching a movie reading that book. It's so perfectly descripted. But also for me, Ghost Eaters is similar to that. Like that is one of those books while like reading that, I'm like, this is mind blowing. It's in the beginning exactly what I think it is. And then
Yeah.
it becomes something completely different. Like it's so well constructed. I uh I read it last year. I re-listened to the audiobook. So two purchases, you're welcome.
Wow.
I
Thank you.
re-listened to the audiobook over the last 2 days just to like refresh on it. And I'm like, man,
Wow.
it's so good. It's such a good book. But to me, it sits similar to Only Good Indians, where like I thought I knew what I was in for. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, grief, addiction. I read King. I understand these things. But no, I did not understand it. It's so much different than what I expected it to be. And that's the greatest compliment for someone who reads a lot and watches a lot of movies. Like I go in not trying to solve the plot because I still want to enjoy it. But you see those markers and you're like, all right, I get where this is going. And
Yeah.
you threw me. That one just throws me. It's so good.
I don't know what to say other than that's awesome. That is amazing. I will I'm gonna take the Only Good Indians parallel park and like I'm gonna hold on to that one because that's an awesome thing to say.
Yeah, no, they do. For me, they sit in a very similar spot. Uh which is great. I love when you can find books that are like that, where like it's so instantly recognizable as something new to you, and it
Hmm.
feels so fresh. Um, and I always try to support, even if I get into an author and like after 3 or 4 books, I'm like, they're kind of doing the same thing for me now.
Hmm.
Uh, but I'm always going to buy the book because I think it's important to support authors as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, my TBR will only grow as it should. Like that should be a list that gets longer every year, not shorter.
Yeah.
Um, much to my wife's dismay at the number of books. But but then I find people, and you are one of them, where I'm like, oh, I think I know what I'm in for. And then it's different. And then the
Yeah.
next book comes out. And I'm like, all right, I know what he did last time. He got one over on me. He's not gonna do it again. And then you do, and I'm like, damn it, he's good at this.
I mean, how do you do that? Like, how does a writer stick? Like, it's a conundrum because it's like
Mhm.
you want people to come back for more, and
Yeah.
the way that you get people to come back for more is having them like
Yeah.
what you do, and people kind of inevitably want more of that. Like, I like
Yeah.
what you do, I want more of that. Give me more
Yeah.
of that. And if you don't give them more of that, they're gonna be like, oh, I don't like that. I want more of that other thing.
I want what I like.
Yeah. So there's that weird kind
Mhm.
of like it's like a line that you have to kind of walk where it's like giving people what they think they want
Yeah.
while giving them something maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I panic about that stuff because you know, I don't know how many tricks this pony has, but I feel like every book has to be like different
Yeah.
than the one before it, just to kind of stay fresh and engaging for me.
Yeah.
Um, so there'll be like these little obstructions or these challenges up front, like write a book about this or write a book like this.
Yeah.
Um, and then but man, I fall prey to it too, where like I think of, and I talk about this a lot, so this is a broken record moment, but I love bands, and I love bands. I love Tom Waits. I love Nick Cave.
Mm.
And I mean, I just, any band, pick a band. Like, it's like, and it's like, oh, this is their experimental
Yeah.
album, or this is their concept album, or this is the,
Yeah.
like, and it's kind of like, well, that's not my Kiss. Like, I want the makeup on.
You don't
Uh,
want the disco album? What are you talking about?
I mean, I feel like Tom Waits sounds like Tom Waits, and
Yeah.
going in, like, this is a Tom Waits album.
Hmm.
And there could be some kind of variation of form,
Yeah.
but it is a it's his voice, it's his storytelling, it's his music.
Hmm.
So what is that? It's that weird kind of like, how do you get a new Tom Waits album that's you're gonna be like, oh yeah, it's more of that Waits feeling,
Yeah.
but it's new.
Yeah. That's, and as a person who talking to people is my biggest creative outlet. So for me, this is the creative pursuit. I work in digital marketing during the day. It's boring. I help people sell cars. Like that's not interesting. So for me, I was like, oh, I'm good at talking.
Yeah,
That's my greatest skill set, for better or worse. So let's pursue that. Let's that be the creative thing I do. I can find fulfillment in that. So for you as someone who your creative outlet, among other things, is, sitting down and writing, is there, because now there is, commerce attached to it, is there a pressure to feel like, oh, this one kind of hit? Do I do this one again? Or
yeah,
do I lean in? Because I'm a person who, when I like someone, I like their voice, not necessarily the words they're saying. So similar to the music reference, majority of the bands I listen to 10 years ago sounded like different bands.
yeah,
If they put out the same album every year, I don't care. I
yeah,
already have that album. I need the new one. Like, what is your life like now? What
yeah,
kind of lyrics can you write based on becoming a father? How does that impact the way you approach songwriting? Like, those are the things that I find really interesting. And for me, great writers, great novelists, it's the same thing where you can like start to track, like, oh, this is where they're at in their life. This is clearly what they were dealing with when
yeah,
they wrote this. Not to go back to Polinick again, but after his dad died, he wrote 3 horror novels because like that's the headspace he was in. He needed to process.
which three?
So Hunted, Diary, and have them all behind me. What is the other one? Um, I'll think of it. But yeah, Hunted and Diary were the main ones. Of
Wow,
like, I don't know if you know the story of his dad dying, but it is he was murdered by a white supremacist, and then the house was burned down. So
I had no idea.
wild story. And so like him going through the process of grieving that, he writes the horror novels because he's like dealing with death. Not that his books didn't already deal with wild subject matter as a transgressive writer, but
Yeah,
like especially Diary and Haunted, those are very, very dark books, and you
yeah,
can tell he's working things out in them. And I love that because that gives things such a real feeling. It's not
yeah,
just this mass produced, hey, this hit, let me do this again. He never
yeah,
wrote another Fight Club because he's not interested in writing. Well, he did. He wrote Fight Club too, but as a comic book. So even the medium changes because if I'm going to approach this, I need to approach it in a different way than I approached it before.
yeah, yeah.
Similar to like Raimi with Evil Dead. Every Evil Dead's a different movie.
Totally, totally. Um, but there is that like funny kind of like, you know, the fans want,
Yeah.
you're asking about, is there some sort of kind of external pressure? I I don't personally feel that pressure because I'm not successful enough to have that pressure. Like I
You're
like
still under the radar enough that you can do what you want
well,
to an extent.
it's not so much that I can do what I want. It's that like I think what the difference is there's this line, this
Mhm.
baseline, and you're either above it or below it. And if
Yeah.
you're below it, which I am, you're
Mhm.
working towards that line.
Yeah.
If you're above it, you have to either like it's like you need to kind of maintain or like it's funny because uh if you had a Stephen Graham Jones or a Paul Tremblay on, I'm sure they would speak very differently about this, but like I'm under the radar to the
Mhm.
extent where like I'm chasing numbers
Yeah.
rather than like a more established author who would probably be like if there was any pressure, it would be to maintain that
Yep.
or
Or
like
grow that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um I have to kind of like we're still like in the race to kind of like get above
Yeah.
that medium or whatever that kind of sweet spot is.
You're still revving the engine up to get to 60, and they're already at it.
They're at 85,
Yeah.
95. They're
Like we said, Jones accidentally writes books while writing a book. So that guy's a different beast altogether.
totally. Um, yeah, they're fast and furious, and I feel like I'm what is a non-fast and the furious? I might be like chitty chitty bang bang or something.
I was
So
gonna say hot rod. Hot rod.
sounds good. Where's my yeah, yeah.
But you also have done other stuff. So like I've got The Boy behind me on the shelf.
Ah,
I rewatched
yeah.
that in
Oh
preparation.
man.
I didn't know that was you until after I had messaged you, and I was like, I should look up all the other stuff you'd done. And
Aw.
I've had that movie for years.
Aw.
And I was like, oh, this
Good.
movie's great. I had no idea you wrote this. But like done movies, obviously you did Wendell and Wild, which is phenomenal. I have a Nightmare Before Christmas tattoo. So like
Aw. Yeah.
I love Henry Selick's work so much. Not Tim Burton. People get that shit wrong and it makes me mad. Henry Selick's work. And then also like Quiet Part Loud. So you've worked in other mediums.
Yeah.
Um, does that scratch a different itch for you creatively? Or is it all kind of bundled under the same thing?
I mean, it probably is just one big itch.
Mhm.
I'm just like breaking out in hives all the time, and it's just like
Creative hives.
creative hives. I'm just picking little hive scabs. Like it's all storytelling,
Yeah.
and I think that like the medium in which you tell those stories, it can vary and but they're all collaborative processes, like,
Yeah.
working with either whether you're working with an editor or a comic book artist or a filmmaker, like it
Mhm.
is, you know, I I think writing novels and fiction is the kind of the purest form for sure. But
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, it's kind of like, for me personally, like there are stories that I want to tell, and it's like just like what is the kind of transcendent quality? Like how can a story be the best story that it can be? And sometimes, a lot of times, that's you know with the input of others. So
Yeah.
you know everything is just elevated. You're just kind of like getting these stories to lift to a higher level, and uh, I just love to be a part of that process.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, and you've worked on some really cool stuff, which is
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, man. Like, this is life, and it's a struggle. It's the eternal kind of freelancer's
yeah.
lifestyle. Like some years are great, some years not so great, but it's like the choice, the choice I am making is I'm saying I wanna tell stories, and that's how I'm gonna support my family. And that means telling a lot of stories and telling
Yeah.
them a lot of different mediums, and
Yeah.
and some of them are bigger than others, some of them are more lucrative than others, but like it's just this kind of like the outflow versus the kind of like pent up, like if I don't get the story out, like
Mhm.
it gets a little, I get ornery because I need to exorcise more
Yeah.
than than anything.
Yeah, well, that leads me to a good question is, do the stories feel like they live within you or like there's something you have to create on the page? Because I've heard writers talk about it both ways. Like it's a struggle to every single word seems like a fight for some writers, and others it's like I have to get this out. It's in here. I just have to get it all out.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. I mean,
Mhm.
like, I'm not gonna do a ham fit. I'm not gonna do a birth analogy because that feels inappropriate. But
I've
like,
got kids, it's fine. I've been in the room. And
but
so
it's that feeling of like, you know, I have so many stories. I want
they're crowning. Are you about to say your stories are
and
crowning?
they're just like they want to get out. They want to like like it's just like the aperture, like the
Yep.
the kind of like the getting them out can be a bit of a painful process, but I feel like at the end of the day, I'm glad when it's out of my system. And
Yeah.
not all of them are great stories, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
They're out of my system. Let
They're
them
someone
fly.
else's problem now.
Just give them to the world. Like it's like that bird, like birds in the nest. Like
Yeah.
they have to leave the nest at a certain point, and they either fly or they fall, or some predator eats them. Um,
Mhm.
you know, they have to survive on their own. I don't know if I believe that. I'm just kind of mouthing off now, but like there is a certain kind of release.
Yeah.
And some of them live and some of them die.
Do you do you still hold them precious once they're out in the world? Or are you good at kind of separating whether it be reviews that you get from them or how they perform? Is it once it's out, it's you're on to the next thing? Or is it that stage of so I'm still this will be, I don't know, the 13th episode of the
Yeah.
show. I'm still very new to it.
Yeah.
And there are times when I'm listening back while I'm editing. I'm like, man, I should have said this, or this is going to go out in the world. And I don't know if I got across the point I wanted to get across in the right way. But
Yeah.
there's nothing I can do about it now because part of my goal was that other than taking out some ums and ahs and when someone's phone rings, like I'm putting out the show. I want this to be me figuring out how to do it. And episode one's going to be terrible. And I'm okay with that because episode 100 is going to be good because episode one was as terrible as it needed to be. But
Yeah.
there's part of me that's like, I don't know if I want people to hear this one, or like there's that piece of me that feels insecure about it.
Yeah.
Is there any of that, or have you gotten to the point where you can just kind of let it be what it is?
I mean, you kind of have to let it be what it like once it's out there in the world, like
Yeah.
your like your ability to make a decision, it's gone.
Yep.
It's theirs. And that can be liberating, but like
Mhm.
um as someone who I read everything. I read
Yeah.
every review. I read every Goodreads review. It is a bad habit, and it's not
Yeah.
a healthy habit, but and I almost like I start my day with that.
Ooh,
Like,
ooh,
you
that's
know,
rough.
humbling. It's humbling. Um, it allows me to kind of see where I am in the universe. Like what is my place within this world? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm right here because I have a star ranking, or like a rating, like, like you're just like, okay, like this is, you know, on a constructive side, the hope is that like you read these reviews for some sort of kind of consensus
Mhm.
criticism to learn from. Like I can still learn from a review, whether it's a reader review,
Yeah.
customer review, or a book, actual book review. But like all of it, like if someone says if enough people say the same thing, uh, it's like, okay, well that's interesting, and like now I can kind of process that in a way that like informs the next book.
Yeah.
But I've learned that there's just like a lot of people in the world, and you're not going to make them all
Yeah.
happy. And I find that like I can make a lot of people mad. And it's a little bit like, oh man, like these people are really not happy with this book, with these books, and or these movies or these whatevers. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like, yeesh, like, and I have to be okay with that. Like
Yeah.
like it's theirs now. Um, yeah, it's weird. It is not healthy.
Yeah.
It is the opposite of a health. Like I if I was made of sterner stuff, I wouldn't look,
Mhm.
but I just have to because I know it's out there. And
Everyone does. Everyone looks.
yeah,
Because
it's
the temptation's too great not to.
yeah,
I feel like it's too difficult to overcome that. Do you have a favorite bad review? Gabino Iglesias is really good at like posting
oh yeah,
terrible reviews. Like my
yeah.
favorite is just one that says "The Devil Takes You Home" is woke. Like that's the whole review is just woke. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's if that's what you got out of this book, you did not read the book.
yeah. Um, I always pull this card out because it is my favorite bad review. Uh, I wrote a book that the boy is actually based on.
Mhm.
It's called Miss Corpus, and it came out in like 2003, and so pre Goodreads,
Yeah.
and um, it was it was an Amazon customer review because they're Amazon customer reviews. And the kind of headline, the title of the review is "This book make me no want to learn English no more."
Oh my gosh.
Um, and the body of the review is in essence like I'm not from America. I've recently moved to the United States. I'm taking English as a second language. I'm taking it like a course in
Yeah.
English. And my teacher suggested I read this book, but this book is no good. I don't understand why my teacher recommended this book to me. It's awful. And I remember reading that review and just being like, "Oh my God, like I have killed like an entire language for this person." And that felt like yeesh, like like there's that feeling of, you know, some books are not for you. Like,
Yeah.
like it's just inevitable that like there are a lot of books in this world and not all of them are going to be written for you. And but I felt bad. I just felt really guilty. I was like, "Oh man, like I've never dissuaded someone from speaking English." So that's one that I kind of hold in my pocket
That one is
next to my heart.
that's a pretty phenomenal story. That usually there's like a through line, they're all pretty similar.
Yeah,
But that one is wholly unique. So
that is, yes. That is the frame it on the wall.
I what one question that I think is interesting is how do your children react to what you do? Because my kids are 12 and 8, so obviously nothing I do will ever be cool
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm dad.
yeah.
But my daughter, when like trying to explain to her, my 8-year-old, the podcast, and like she sees me like making TikToks, like all 34-year-old men should be doing. Um, and then she was like, Dad, how many followers do you have? And so I told her,
Yeah.
and it's like in the 20s or whatever. She's like, that's embarrassing, Dad. I was
Oh.
like,
Oh no.
just
It's
brutal. Just cut me
uh,
to my core.
it's when they have their own social media profiles, whatever that age is,
Hmm.
and their followers like outnumber your like when they get to a place where it's like, you know, they won't follow you, but you
Yeah.
follow them. Like it's
Yeah.
like, like you can be like, "Honey, like follow me back. Like I've been
Yeah.
following you for weeks now. Like why have you not? Why have you not?"
Yeah. You lower their social standing.
Um, I have two sons.
Mhm.
One is 8 and the other's 11. So it's kind of in a similar.
Yeah. Oh, my son turned 12 yesterday, so we
Oh
are in the
man, happy
same boat. In the
birthday.
same boat.
That's amazing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to know what 12 is like. Like that seems so old. How's it been?
It's for the 24 hours, it's been good. He's been playing video games with his friend.
There
So
you go.
they're
There you
out
go.
of school this week. And
Yeah.
his want for his birthday was like, I want to play video games with my friend. I want Subway for lunch, and I want Little Caesars for dinner. And I'm like, all right, dude,
Go, man. That
you
is an
you.
amazing birthday. You get what you want.
Yeah, and those are all easily accessible things. We are good to go, even in Maine with the limited options of food here. That is, I can do both of those.
Are you buried under like a mountain of snow right now? Like, does it get tragic?
Uh,
Like, are you?
no, it's my yard is mostly melted right
Uh,
now. It's been a mild winter. This is
yeah,
only our second one here. And so
yeah.
everybody told us last year, like it's been like they keep being like it's oddly warm. I'm like, I know why it's oddly warm. We have data that tells us why. Um, and so it hasn't been too bad. We got a couple of big drops that came through, but nothing too much. It was -40 one day with the wind chill.
Oh my
And as someone from the South, born and raised, I'm used to like a winter day being like 35 degrees. And you're like,
Yeah.
man, I got to get my parka. Whereas here, I wore shorts the other day because it was like 40.
Oh,
So
you go.
I'm acclimating.
Yeah. Um, I I tell my kids, I try to get them to I think I've tried and failed and kind of moved on from convincing them that what I do is cool.
Yeah.
Um, I there's if I can make it feel like forbidden fruit, they get curious.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like it's if I do it, it feels a little bit. I don't know. My hope, my secret hope, and this is not something that they'll ever gratify for me. I want to believe they think it's cool, but they're just not telling me they
Yeah.
think it's cool. They're like they're gonna begrudge me this one kind of like just give it to me. Just tell me you approve. Like I'm so desperate for their approval, and they smell it on me that they're just
Yeah.
like, nah, nah, not giving it to you. Not gonna do it.
Yeah. I over the summer, I had a friend who was making an album, and so I flew out to LA to be an extra in a couple music videos. And
Oh,
she's doing a Nine Inch Nails cover album. So
oh,
like there's a lot of iconic imagery, obviously, with Nine Inch Nails.
yeah.
And so like I was like, my kids will think this is cool. Like we recreated the March of the Pigs
Oh my
video.
God.
So like the all white room and I'm playing drums in the video. And I'm like, there's no way they're not gonna think this is cool. Um, my daughter was half interested, and then she was like, "Why are there other people in this video? I don't know what's happening." And then my son wouldn't even watch it, like wouldn't even give me the gratification of viewing it. And I was like, "Man, I can't win.
You have
Can't
to do
do
this.
it."
You have to just kind of like leave your browser open to the video, and they have to like stumble upon it and be like,
Yeah,
"What is this? Like, is that like they have to feel like they're discovering it
yeah,
more than, like because if you give it to them, if you hand it to them, like here, you want to see something your dad did? Like they'll just be like, no, like bleh. It's amazing. You just have to like do some weird kind of like reverse psychology.
yeah.
It's just it will never work.
No, and it's the ultimate power they hold over us. Of like, I remember desperately wanting like my parents' approval.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is something that a lot of has shifted a lot. And now like my kids have my approval almost unconditionally. Like I
Yeah.
love you no matter what. I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. Please approve of me. Is
Like, meh, I'll think about it. Maybe.
they're like, yeah, get that follower count up and we'll see what happens.
They're gonna incentivize their love. I tell you what, we'll have a tiered love program where if you can hit
I like
200
that.
followers, I'll give you a hug. 1,000, I will say in public, I love you, daddy.
I'm gonna have to start buying followers.
You do that. What is that? That weird kind
The
of
follow for follow
yeah.
stuff and
Oh God. No, what is the actual like we have a bot farm and we'll
oh yeah.
farm you and
Where
like
you get like 1,000 followers for $10 and then you have to buy the likes that go with it. Yeah.
yeah. I that would be amazing to do that for love. Like, for my daughter's love, I will bot myself. Oh man.
That's so funny. Um, do your kids have any, do you see in them like the move towards creativity as a job, or is that, and also like where did that come from for you? Was that always the goal?
Well, for me, the list of things that I couldn't do got
Mhm.
really long, really quick.
Hey, process of elimination is a good way to figure out what you're good at.
Can't play an instrument, can't pick up a basketball, football, soccer ball, baseball, can't like, not a honor roll student, like non like the things that I am not just
Mhm.
kind of like they were there so quickly. Um in writing, I was a single child, just raised by my mom. She was a potter. She is a potter. So craft was always something that was kind
Mhm.
of in my worldview. Um, and I writing just became like, as a solitary kind of indoor kid,
Yeah.
um, writing, like telling kind of stories and populating my world with, things that came out of my imagination. Like that was just it was a cheaper, kind of more cost-effective way to kind of occupy my time than
Yeah.
doing, it was either that or watching TV, which I did a lot of too. Um, but for them, for the kids, it's weird because like we're navigating right now is they are weird dudes.
Which
Like
is
they
the best. My kids are so weird. I love it.
know, right? Like I just love like and some of it we can kind of attribute to the parents,
Yeah.
but a lot of it is just it's just them.
Yeah.
We are the ones who buy the clothes. So like we're choosing like the outfits have a lot to do with like our style,
Yeah.
which they hate.
Of course.
Um, so there's that level of weirdness where it's like parentally approved weirdness. Like
Mhm.
we're doing this, but like their choices of like their style, their hair, their like personality, like those things are just kind of bubbling up right now. And yeah, they're weird guys. And I
That's
just love
great.
that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me the goal is always, even if I don't understand it, like I always want to be supportive and leaning in to
Mhm.
whatever that interest is. Because I know like I grew up super religious, but I was the kid that, while like the most ideal, like good kid you could possibly be, I was
Yeah.
also into the heaviest music and wanted to watch like the nastiest horror movies I could possibly find. And then I would be volunteering at church on Sunday. So like there was this balance of my parents figuring out what to lean into and what not to, or like interests I had. I always wanted to do gymnastics because we had a trampoline, and I'm like, I'm good at this stuff. But like being a boy in the 90s, there were certain terms that were used that we are now know are very inappropriate towards
Yeah.
boys who wanted to do that. But for me, that was always something like I would naturally be good at this. Like I'm built for it and I'm good at it, but I never got to experience it. So
Yeah.
for my kids, I'm like, even if I don't understand, like I always want to lean in, even if you try it for a month and you realize, hey, it's not for me. It goes on that list of things I'm not good at.
Yeah.
At least we know. I don't ever want them to be like, hey, I wish we would have done that.
Yeah.
But also like not feel comfortable to come to me and say that they're interested in something because of how I
Yeah.
might perceive it. My wife and I are really hyper aware of like the words we use with our kids and how those might impact the way they view things or the way they view how we think about them.
Yeah.
Again, I talk for a living, so I talk quickly and concisely. So like that's the job, and that doesn't always equate well to being a parent, where you have to slowly and methodically lay something out or like build out a concept that they're unaware of. Like
Totally.
when they ask about death, and I'm like, I don't know, you close your eyes and it's gone. Like you can't say that to an 8-year-old.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You, in this kind of religious upbringing in your childhood, your youth, the kind of hard music and the horror
Mhm.
movies, when you would when you would go to Sunday services and volunteer, and you'd be like, or you would be hanging out with either a peer group or adults, and you'd
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, I just watched Evil Dead 2 this weekend." How would they react and how would you
Mhm.
talk about it to
Mhm.
them, with them, like Texas
Yeah.
Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th? Like how would they respond? And then how would you be like, oh no,
Mhm.
this is what it is?
Yeah. So for me, luckily, I always had a couple good friends. Shout out Nathan and Steven, who we were always into the same types of movies.
Uh-huh.
Like when we were in high school, there was a movie stop near us, and so I'd go and I would just talk to like the guy that knows everything at movie stop and be like, "What is the most fucked up Italian movie you have in stock right now?" And he would be like, "Obviously, it's Cannibal Holocaust." And I'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna watch Cannibal Holocaust." And like that was what we would do.
Yeah.
But like talking about it, I was always weirdly popular. Like I was homeschooled, so like church was my only outlet.
Uh-huh.
And so, but like I was really good at like kind of fitting into every group. Uh, I was just naturally good at that for some reason.
Yeah.
And so I would talk about things, and there were people that, if they just weren't into it, just didn't engage. But I never really got any pushback as far as movies.
Yeah.
And I started watching like foreign films really early on. Like I was like 12 and 13, and I had Netflix because it had just come out. And so I was watching like weird Japanese movies,
Mhm.
and like way before any of my friends were. But for me, it was more the heavy music was what really like threw up red flags for people.
Because
And
they couldn't quantify it, couldn't kind of rectify, like, but you are this,
yeah,
so why are you doing this?
I think
Like,
it
what's
was they view it as angry is always like the first thing. People think just because someone's yelling in a song that they're angry. And that's
yeah,
not the case. Sometimes that's just how you emote and it's fine.
yeah,
And so like that would throw them. And then when I would be like, oh, but it's a Christian band. Because I watched the worst movies you can imagine, but I only listened to Christian music until I was like 17. So I'd be like, but it's a Christian band. Like, how are you gonna argue with here's what they're talking about? And like that's when things would get weird for them and they would try to find ways to like still not like it.
yeah,
Um, and then I started getting tattooed, and that was a big issue as well.
yeah.
I had super long hair, like all the way down my back. Uh,
No,
yeah, so really long hair. Started getting tattooed at 18, and at one point, my friends and I were asked to stop volunteering at church because like parents were concerned with the way we looked.
yeah,
Uh, and for me, that stuff rolls right off my back. Like I'm really good at not caring what people think about the way I look or the way I speak or anything like that. When it comes to something like the podcast, I care more, but it's because I feel like I'm creating something.
yeah,
But like my physical appearance to me is such an afterthought. Like even for someone who has spent a lot of time and money on tattoos, like I don't think about them because I have them. So like the way people react to them, I'm like that's not my problem. And
yeah,
even from a young age, I was kind of like that. But I was always the weird one. I was the weird kid, but
yeah.
also the one that everybody knew you could rely on. Like if you needed something, I would volunteer in a heartbeat.
Put a call in. Get here. Um, I yeah, it's so funny how looks and appearance, like
Mhm.
that's the thing that people kind of base their a certain impression, opinion on,
Yeah.
like, if it's something that they're not used to or not as familiar with, it like it becomes a kind of oppositional thing. But it's just so funny. Like, as someone who puts zero thought into the way they look, you know, back then to now, like it's
Yeah.
amazing how, like, it is. I have had the privilege of not caring what I look like, and being okay, like getting by.
Mhm.
I have coasted on personality more than appearance.
That's the way to do it. I think there's a sweet spot of like, yeah, people like you, but not enough to bother you about it. Or like you're normal enough looking that you don't really stand out. Like being mediocre in most things for me is great
Yeah.
because I'm like, Zach's here, cool. If he's not, we don't really notice, and that's fine too. And I really like that sweet spot of things.
It's oh, hey, you're here.
Yeah.
Like, when did you get here? Back,
Yeah.
you're here, man. Oh, cool.
But also, as a person who doesn't really care about those things, I'm also a notorious Irish goodbyer, where like as soon as and this has happened in like work functions where
Yeah.
like everybody's standing around talking, and I'll just walk away because I'm like, oh, my part of this conversation is done. I
Yeah.
don't need to say anything. I'll break conversational flow if I say bye. And
Yeah.
people will point it out. They'll be like, "Are you okay? Are you mad?" I'm like, "No, there was nothing left for me to say. It was time for me to leave."
I ghost all the
Yeah.
damn time. My
Yeah.
wife hates it. It's like probably her least favorite attribute of mine, where it's like there's just a moment, like it could
Hmm.
be like an event, a party, a gathering. There's just a moment where it's just like I'm done. Like
Yep.
I'm out. Like,
Same.
it makes no sense when it is. It's a lot earlier than my wife wants it to be, but like it's just always like there's just this like I'm out, I'm out, I'm out. And like if we don't leave, if I can't leave because she wants to stay, it'll just be like I'm out, I'm out, I'm out, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's like I'm hitting my head against a
Yeah.
wall. I'm like that weird robot toy that's just like butting up
Constant.
against the wall because it's like it doesn't understand that like it needs to recalibrate.
That's so funny. Well, I mean, speaking of recalibration, like for me, speaking and being in front of people is work. It's not intuitive to me. It's a learned skill. So like I need to recuperate after that. Um, are you similar where like if you're in a group setting or if you're at a convention and you're on for 48 hours, what's that period like after for you? Because I crash.
Yeah.
Like if I'm at a work conference, it's all over when I get home. I'm not talking to anybody.
I mean, it's weird. And I feel like it's maybe a bit counterintuitive. Like I think like, I love like live events in
Yeah.
person. I find, especially in the last two-ish years, in this quote unquote post-COVID
Yeah.
world we now live in, where we're back. Um, I find myself very happy and eager to kind of engage and be
Hmm.
about. But like I can't I'm really off like when you're there, when we're at the tables, the booths, like
Yep.
like that feels like this is why I'm here. But as soon as it becomes like, hey, let's go to the bar, or like, hey, let's do the thing after, I'm just like,
Yeah.
like I have a harder time. That's where I kind of like shut down. And
Hmm.
it's bad because like, I mean, there's so many amazing authors and writers who thrive
Yeah.
in the bar and like that's kind of why they go and like to socialize and be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like really I'm really nervous. I have a lot of social anxiety when it comes to those like when like the when you have to be just you and you're
Yeah.
drinking and like I'm a bit of a teetotaler and like
Same. I'm a lifelong sober person, so I'm
yeah.
right there with you.
Yeah, it's just like I'm just so kind of intensely aware of my body and like it's just like
Yeah.
I'm like I don't know what to do with myself now that I'm just all that is being asked of me is to be me. And
Yeah.
like it's so hard. Like I can't like I would rather be on for 24 or 48 hours and
Yeah.
then just go to bed. And then like, you know, which, it's a bummer because I feel like all the conversations I've missed out on, all of the like, oh
Mhm.
man, you should have been there. We stayed up till 3 o'clock. I'm in bed at 11 and if not 10. And
Yeah.
you know, Netflix is on and I just need to like, yeah, that's it.
Is writing something that helps you with that recharge and that focus, or is that something also that you need to after a day of writing you can feel, drained and kind of over it?
I I write in kind of fits and spurts.
Hmm.
I do my best writing in the morning and anything after lunch is like diminishing returns.
Yeah.
So like I just like I wake up before the sun comes up, before anyone else wakes up, and I just try to get as much of my day done
Hmm.
in those early hours because I just that's when I'm at my most. And so it's not so much that like I know there are those writers who like have these kind of like intense like they just like write for days on end and like that,
Yeah.
you know. But I like it's 3 o'clock and I'm just like, I'm not gonna write any, like I would,
Yeah.
there's just nothing I could write right now that would be of any value or any
Yeah.
interest. So it's like it's weird. Like I can write, but I just like my day is kind of done.
Yeah.
And I get to do fun things like this or do other things, take meetings and
Hmm.
read books, but like
Yeah.
the writing needs to have it has a time in the day.
Hmm.
It's a finite time. Because otherwise, like if I'm like cramming or like under the gun for a deadline, like I'm
Hmm.
not doing anyone any favors by writing crap at
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, knowing your limits is part of being successful in any field of like, no, this is what I'm capable of. But not only this is what I'm capable of, but these are the times when I'm capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Like I know I can't perform a lot of the duties of my job for extended periods of time because they take a lot of concentration. So
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm gonna do a 2 hour block of calls, and then I'm not gonna talk to anybody because now I'm mentally spent. I'm gonna do all the busy work that
Yeah.
entails most of my day because
Yeah.
I did the part that's hardest for me.
Yeah.
And then you get to hang out with your kids in the afternoon. So
Yeah.
that's
Totally.
the best. All right, we're up on three. It is I really appreciate you taking the time. This
Hey,
was a lot of fun.
thank
Uh
you. Thank you for having me. Like honestly,
of course.
like your message was so sweet and like I just feel like I don't know, like beyond the kind of ghosting and the kind
Hmm.
of Irish goodbye of it all, like I feel like there's something to be said about this kind of level of engagement where it's just shooting the shit, right? Like you're
Yeah.
just chatting, kind of talking through stuff and like, you know, I should stop a hair before saying it's therapeutic, but there is something to be said about just being able to kind of like
Hmm.
there's a catharsis to that.
Yeah.
Like just like you're just kind of like talking about things that matter to you and how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Like
No, I agree. And honestly, that was the inception of the idea for the show. Like, I thought of the title. Like, I was like, Grinding to a Halt is like a funny name for a business podcast because, like, marketing, it's all about the grind set. And,
yeah,
like, I hate that stuff. And so I'm like, it's a funny title. And I mentioned it to my wife, and she's like, no, that's kind of a good idea. And I'm like, oh, well, then it's a great idea because you don't like my ideas.
done.
Um, and so in thinking about it, I was like, I have conversations all day long and I'm good at my job and I enjoy aspects of my job, but my job is wholly unfulfilling. I'm good at it as a function to pay the bills. So
Yeah,
like what I'm most interested in is just having conversations with people that help me understand who they actually are.
yeah,
Like to me, that's the fun part of being an account manager is like, yeah, we can help your business grow through digital marketing. I don't care about that as much as I care about how does that impact your day-to-day life?
yeah,
Like, why
yeah,
is growing your business important? Your kid's going to college and you got to pay for that. I understand that. Like that is a tangible thing that, yeah, let's work towards that.
yeah,
So that was the impetus for the show. And then like once I started having conversations, it is very therapeutic
yeah.
to just be like, no, we're just two people talking about things we're interested in with no format at all. We go
Yeah.
wherever it takes us. And I love it.
Amazing.
So
Um,
awesome. You should plug your stuff. Where can people find you? Where
oh
can they
yeah.
buy all of your books?
I mean, they're out there. Maybe, hopefully, wherever, check your local independent bookstore.
Mhm.
But they're available wherever books are sold. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Definitely very orderable, if not. Um, and yeah, I'm on the social media platforms. I do the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the TikToks and the Blue Skies and
And there's
and the
so
like.
many now.
Jesus, it's I I just throw it all up in the air and I'm just waiting desperately for one to land, just so that like
So you can know what to focus on, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've been a bad social media person lately. But I think I'm just like waiting it out, like holding my breath for like just one to rise above them all. And
One viral post, so you know.
there can only be one. Um, but yeah, I'm out there on
Awesome.
the
Well,
interwebs.
Clay, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh man, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.